A wealthy driver walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom, convinced the rules were for other people. She was the kind of defendant, a luxury SUV businesswoman who carried herself like the world should step aside for her, chin high, sunglasses still on indoors, walking toward the bench, as if she owned the building. Her case? A very ordinary offense. A no parking zone violation combined with an ignored court summons. Something that makes most people nervous or embarrassed, but not her. She looked annoyed that she even had to show up. From the moment she stepped forward, the courtroom felt it, that quiet tension that appears when someone believes their status is a shield. She sighed loudly. She kept tapping her designer nails on the podium. She looked at the clock like the entire justice system was interrupting her real life. But today wasn't going to be about her wealth, her confidence, or the way she thought rules were optional. Today would reveal a deeper truth. Respect over ego, the simple moral Judge Caprio has lived by for decades. Respect weighs more than privilege, and the law sits higher than status. Her entitlement walked in first, but something very different would walk out with her. Tell us where you're watching from. Entitlement looks the same everywhere. It was a gray morning in Providence, the kind where the sky felt heavy and the streets whispered with leftover rain. Inside the municipal courtroom, the air was calm, almost hushed, the way it usually feels before a tense case walks in. People sat in quiet rows, holding their paperwork, whispering softly, waiting for Judge Caprio to begin the next round of hearings. The bailiff leaned slightly toward the judge's desk just before the session resumed and said quietly, "Judge, the woman with the SUV, she wasn't too pleased outside. Bit of an attitude." He didn't say it with judgment, just a gentle heads up, the kind Caprio appreciated. A warning that a storm might be walking toward the bench. Her file sat on top of the stack. A no parking zone violation, nothing dramatic. But attached to it was a pink slip, a missed summons, meaning she had ignored an earlier order to appear. The city system flagged it automatically. Not criminal, but serious enough to suggest she thought the rules didn't apply to her. When her name was called, she stood up slowly, almost reluctantly. People noticed the details, the flick of her wrist, the annoyed exhale, the way she kept her eyes on her phone until the very last step. As she walked forward, she typed one last message, then let her phone drop into her handbag with a sigh, loud enough to earn her a glance from an older man in the second row. The courtroom mood shifted. She approached the podium with a slight eye roll, as if the entire morning had conspired against her. Judge Caprio watched quietly, not judging her, just observing the human moment unfolding in front of him. It wasn't the first time someone walked in believing they were above the process, but each case carried its own story, its own lesson, waiting to be revealed. The stage was set, a calm courtroom, a frustrated defendant, and a judge known for patience, but also for fairness. Judge Caprio began the way he always did, when with kindness first. He offered a small, warm smile. "Good morning. How are you today?" His tone was gentle, giving her the chance to reset, to step into the moment with dignity. She didn't take it. "Let's just get this over with," she replied, her voice sharp, dripping impatience. She didn't look at him. Instead, she adjusted the strap of her expensive handbag and tapped the podium like she had somewhere more important to be. A quiet ripple rolled through the courtroom, the kind that isn't loud, but is definitely felt. A mother holding her toddler raised her eyebrows. A college student waiting for his speeding ticket shifted uncomfortably. Even the bailiff straightened just a little. Judge Caprio didn't react. His face stayed soft, almost fatherly. "Well," he said calmly, "we'll get through it together. Let's start with your parking violation." She cut him off before he could finish. I already told the officer it wasn't my fault. I was only there for a minute. If the city wants to fine someone, fine the delivery trucks blocking the whole street. She spoke quickly, defensively, as though she expected him to simply side with her because she was speaking with such certainty. Caprio raised a hand, not to silence her, just to slow the moment down. "Ma'am, I hear you, but let me explain the citation so we're both on the same page." She exhaled dramatically, loud enough that a few people in the back turned their heads. "Fine. Whatever." The tension thickened. This wasn't anger and it wasn't chaos. It was something quieter, Caprio. "Then you missed your scheduled court date. Can you explain why you didn't appear the first time?" Her answer came with a smirk. "Because I was busy. I don't have time for every little notice the city sends out." The entire room froze for a beat. Judge Caprio looked at her gently, his voice steady as a still lake. "I understand people have responsibilities, but the court notices aren't little. They're part of the process that keeps things fair." She shrugged. Simple movement, but loaded with arrogance. "Well, I'm here now. Let's just handle it." The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Her ego pushed forward. His respect held its ground. The moment Judge Caprio tried to continue, the tension in the courtroom began its slow climb upward, step by step, stage by stage. Stage 1, she interrupts the judge. Caprio began. "All right, let me walk you through." She cut in immediately. "I already know what it says. I just told you that." The interruption was sharp, careless. A few people in the gallery exchanged uneasy glances. Even the sound of shuffling papers paused. Judge Caprio's eyes lifted from the file, not angry, just patient. The kind of patience that takes decades to master. "Please allow me to finish," he said gently. She shrugged again, arms crossed now, signaling she wasn't here to listen, only to win. Stage 2, belittling the staff and system. When Caprio explained that ignoring a summons could lead to additional penalties, she scoffed. "Honestly, your system is outdated. Half the time these notices don't even reach people. Maybe the city should fix that instead of bothering me." The clerk shifted uncomfortably. The bailiff looked up from his desk. She wasn't attacking the fine. She was belittling the entire structure, the people who worked every day to make it function. Caprio didn't flinch. "We do our best to keep everything clear," he replied calmly. "But it still requires cooperation." She rolled her eyes. "Sure, if you say so." Stage 3, flaunting wealth and influence. Then came the moment everyone saw coming but hoped wouldn't arrive. "I mean, look at this," she said, motioning toward the ticket. "It's what, $100? This is nothing to me. I spend more on coffee in a week." A few people audibly inhaled, not because she was rich, but because she threw it in the room like it gave her leverage. She added, "I run a company. I don't have time to juggle tiny fines. I'm not like the other people here wasting their morning." A man in the back instinctively lowered his eyes, embarrassed for everyone. The mother with the toddler hugged her child closer. Caprio's face remained serene. "Everyone's time is valuable," he said, "including yours, including theirs." Stage 4, hinting at leaving or ignoring the process. As the judge continued explaining the next steps, she picked up her handbag again and checked her watch. "Look, can we hurry this up? I have a meeting. If this is going to drag on, can I just pay it later and leave?" The request wasn't outrageous, but the tone carried the threat behind it. "I don't need to stay. I will walk out if this isn't on my terms." A soft rustle swept through the room. People didn't move, but the weight of the moment shifted. Caprio paused. His silence was steady, intentional. He looked at her, not with frustration, with the quiet disappointment of someone watching a person dig themselves deeper with every word. The judge spoke slowly. You will have your chance to speak, but you will not rush this court. For the first time, a flicker of tension appeared in her eyes. The faint realization that she may have pushed too far. But the ladder of disrespect wasn't done climbing. The room felt tighter, the patience thinner, and the next moment would push everything to the edge. The breaking point arrived quietly, not with shouting, not with chaos, but with a single careless line that snapped the last thread of patience holding the room together. Judge Caprio began to read the details of the missed summons when she laughed under her breath and muttered just loud enough for everyone to hear. Unbelievable. This old-fashioned setup still thinks it can tell me what to do. The words hung in the air like cold smoke. A few people froze mid-breath. The clerk stopped typing. The bailiff, without being told, subtly shifted his stance. Not aggressive, just prepared. Judge Caprio lowered the paper in his hand, slowly, deliberately. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean forward. He simply looked at her. His gaze was calm, steady, the kind that makes a person feel suddenly, deeply aware of their own behavior. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I need you to understand something. You are not here for me. You are here because the law requires your presence. This isn't about status. It isn't about wealth. And it most certainly isn't about who tells you what to do." She shifted uncomfortably, her confidence thinning around the edges. The courtroom was silent enough that the faint hum of the ceiling lights felt loud. Caprio continued, his tone even, almost gentle. "When you speak about this court, you are speaking about everyone who works here. People who give their time, their patience, and their respect to every person who walks through those doors, including you." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Not yet. The judge set the file down. "Let me be clear. Mocking this process is not acceptable. If you continue down this path, the consequences will reflect not only your violation, but your conduct right here, right now." Her jaw tightened, not in defiance this time, but in the subtle recognition that she had crossed a line even she didn't intend to step over. The power in the room shifted quietly but unmistakably. Her ego no longer filled the space. The judge's calm authority did. And for the first time since she walked in, she didn't look superior. She looked uncertain. Judge Caprio reopened the file, but this time the room felt different. The earlier tension had settled into a quiet seriousness, the kind that comes right before an important truth is spoken. "All right," Caprio said, his voice steady. "Let's go through this carefully." She stood still now. No sighing. No watch checking. No phone. Just waiting. "You were cited for parking in a no parking zone," he began. "The base fine for that is $35. He paused, giving the number space to land. She nodded slightly, the first respectful gesture of the entire morning. "However," he continued, "you missed your scheduled court date. When someone ignores a summons, the system adds an additional penalty to encourage compliance. That penalty brings your total to $90. Her eyes lowered, guilt beginning to soften the sharpness in her expression. Caprio went on, "Now, regarding your conduct today," the courtroom held its breath. "I'm not adding the maximum penalty," he said gently, "but I am adding a small conduct fee, not because you offended me, but because respect is part of this process. Every person who walks into this room deserves fairness, and fairness begins with accountability." She swallowed, her earlier arrogance replaced by quiet realization. "The additional fee is $25, Caprio said. "Your final total is $115. He didn't say it harshly. He said it like a teacher explaining a lesson that matters far beyond the numbers. Then he added the line the courtroom would remember: "Accountability is not optional. Not for the wealthy, not for the busy, not for anyone. The woman blinked slowly, the weight of the moment settling over her. The fine wasn't the real consequence. The lesson was. For the first time since she arrived, she let out a long breath. Not annoyed, not dramatic, just human. Caprio looked at her with a softened expression. You can pay today, or you can set up a plan. Whatever works best for you. No judgment, no resentment, just fairness. And somehow that hit her harder than any punishment could have. The courtroom stayed quiet for a moment after the judge finished speaking. It wasn't the heavy silence from earlier. This one was gentler, almost reflective. The woman stood there with her hands resting on the podium, her posture no longer stiff with superiority. Her shoulders dropped slightly, her chin lowered, and her eyes softened in a way no one had seen since she walked in. The transformation wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, the kind that happens when ego finally steps aside and humanity steps forward. She cleared her throat, voice noticeably smaller. Your Honor, I want to say, I'm sorry. The words came out uneven, like they had to fight their way past old habits. I shouldn't have spoken the way I did. Not to you, not to your staff, not to anyone here. Her voice cracked just a little, barely noticeable, but real. Judge Caprio gave her a quiet nod, encouraging but not pushing. She took a shaky breath. I've been under a lot of stress at work, and I guess I brought that attitude in with me. That wasn't right. The courtroom seemed to exhale with her, a shared breath, a shared relief. Even the bailiff's posture softened. Caprio responded calmly. We all have difficult days. What matters is that we recognize when we've stepped off the right path and make our way back. She nodded, eyes glistening now, her voice almost a whisper. Thank you for not treating me the way I treated everyone else. The judge smiled gently. Well, that's not justice. Justice is understanding people while holding them accountable. You did the harder part. You faced yourself. A tear rolled down her cheek, not from punishment, but from the unexpected relief of being seen, corrected, and forgiven all at once. And for the first time, the courtroom felt warm again. Judge Caprio looked at her with the kind of expression that held no anger, only wisdom. The kind earned over thousands of cases and a lifetime of watching people slowly find their better selves. He spoke softly, almost as if speaking to the entire room, not just her. You know, he began, people often think the law is only about rules and fines, but it's really about how we treat one another. Every time you walk into this courtroom, you bring your character with you, not your wallet, not your title. She listened, her eyes still damp, her breathing slower now. Caprio continued, his voice carrying the weight of fatherly truth. Character counts more than currency. I've seen people with nothing show more dignity than those with everything. And I've seen people with everything learn humility in the simplest moments. The room was silent, Annie, hanging on every word. Respect costs nothing and changes everything. When you offer it, you set the tone for how you'll be treated. When you withhold it, doors close that didn't need to. A few heads in the gallery nodded softly, absorbing the message. Success doesn't buy you a discount on decency. In fact, the more you have, the more responsible you are for how you carry yourself. The woman wiped a tear with the back of her hand, her earlier arrogance nowhere in sight. Caprio leaned back slightly, finishing with a gentle reminder. We all stumble. What matters is whether we learn. And today, you did. That's worth more than any fine I could impose. His words didn't lecture, they reached. And the lesson landed exactly where it needed to. As the woman stepped away from the podium, the courtroom carried a quiet sense of understanding. The kind that comes when a lesson unfolds in real time, right in front of ordinary people who have lived their own versions of pride and regret. And it makes you think, how many times have we seen someone forget respect because they felt powerful? A boss, a driver, a customer, maybe even ourselves on a stressful day. Moments like these remind us that anyone can slip, but anyone can also return to humility with a single honest breath. Have you ever been in a situation where someone's ego filled the room? How did you handle it? Did you stay calm? Did you walk away? Or did you find the courage to meet pride with patience? The beauty of Judge Caprio's courtroom is that it shows something universal. Respect doesn't just restore order, it restores people. In the end, the woman learned that in Judge Caprio's courtroom, respect is earned, never bought. No matter how expensive the car, how busy the schedule, or how high the status, the rules remain the same for every person who stands before the bench. If this story moved you, remember this: justice means more when compassion walks beside it. And here we share the moments where humanity speaks louder than anger, where mistakes meet understanding, and where ordinary people find extraordinary lessons. If you believe in fairness, kindness, and second chances, subscribe for more stories that remind us why respect still matters in this world.